All right, we got our most high-profile guest to date, Paul Hawkins, co-founder and CEO of Hawksoft. Paul is he's got a really interesting story, and I was next to him at the First Choice Trade Show, and I got to hear the brief version of it. So I'm really excited to have him tell it on this. Paul, I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to tell our story.
Yeah,
It's
so
what makes us different.
absolutely. Let's hit the time machine and let's talk about co-founder. How far back do we need to go to start the story of Hawksoft is the first question.
1983, I think it was,
Okay,
when my son was in 5th grade is really where our story starts.
awesome.
His teacher, Mr. Fanazik, I bring that name out because I'll tell you later on, we have actually started something about him. But Mr. Fanazik called me and said, Mr. Hawkins, we've got a problem with your son. And I said, what did he do? He says, oh, he didn't do anything wrong. He's been doing his homework upside down, left-handed. I think he's bored. And he said, and that scares me because we lose our best students from boredom. And he's one of the best students I've ever taught. I do not want to lose him, but he's very analytical, and I believe that he could really benefit from having a computer.
Awesome.
Now remember, this
So
is
what computers
1983.
were out at the time? Was this when the Mac was dropping their 1985 commercials, or what is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, not quite yet,
Okay.
but this is the PC, the IBM PC. We ended up buying a little Radio Shack Tandy 1000.
Nice.
In fact, we have it in our office to this day,
Wow.
and it changed our lives.
Awesome. Shout out to Radio Shack too.
Now, that teacher changed our lives. But let me tell you, I bought it. You know, we all start somewhere. People say, well, where'd you get your start? And I said, well, like anybody else, we started from the beginning, and we went and bought that little Tandy 1000, a little 9-pin printer. It was floppy drives. In fact, we only had one floppy drive when we first got it. You know, that was the 5.5-inch floppy drive.
Right.
The actual floppy drive.
Yeah, or the
Yeah, not the
box.
little hard disk. Yeah. But I started putting it together, and I got it, I thought, all together, and I hit the switch, nothing happened. Going like, what the heck? Well, maybe it has, of course, I grew up in the 50s. Maybe this thing has vacuum tubes, so maybe it takes a while to warm up. Nothing. And I'm going like, oh, man, somebody told me not to buy stuff from Radio Shack, that it was junk. And so I got the boxes back over there, and I was going to put it back in the box and take it back to Radio Shack. And my 10-year-old daughter said, Daddy, you might want to plug it in.
No, for as smart of a guy as you are, you couldn't even figure out the wall outlet.
But, we start at the beginning, and we learn. And so my son and I learned programming. In fact, the teacher said, don't buy any software. Here's a book. And it was a programming book. And it was GW Basic. And GW Basic stands for Gee Whiz Basic. It's actually the name of the program. And he taught me as much as I taught him. And that's an important part of our story, because I tell everybody my son and I grew up together. In programming, yeah, we grew up together. He taught me as much as I taught him.
So you had no background in programming before that?
No, none.
Really?
In fact, when I was in college, I went down, I was kind of half interested in taking a computer class, and I went down to the computer lab, and they were punching them silly cards, and I said, that ain't going nowhere.
No. No shot.
Yeah.
No shot.
And so Sean and I mean, we learned the program together, and his mother was always looking. I still remember the first project he did. He was a little hangman program, and it had a 100-word database in it, and that it's automatically selected from, and then you know how the game Hangman works,
Right.
And then we played it probably 10 times, and okay, now what do we do? Because it wasn't the game that was so interesting; it was the programming was the real game.
Yeah, I was building it.
Yeah, building it.
So go ahead.
My wife wanted let's see, what was the first thing? A recipe program. Put her recipes in. And then she wanted a genealogy program was one of them, and a whole bunch of different things that we were just building as little projects. Meanwhile, we moved to Portland area, and I went to work for a company that imported cheese from all over the world, from France, from Greece, Italy, a lot of cheese from those areas.
Hmm.
Wisconsin,
Only the best.
Wisconsin cheese, and that's where my kids were born, in Wisconsin. So I'm a cheesehead.
Nice.
But we were having a lot of fun and doing these projects and learning and then I got there and we'd get 20 pallets of brie at a time from France, and every once in a while one of those pallets of brie would get what we call orphaned. It didn't get used in the right order, and it would go bad, and that's a lot of money. And I thought, man, here's another project we can do, and told Sean, this is what we can do. Oh yeah, Dad, we can do this and this and this. He had all kinds of ideas. He'd been to work with me. Now he's in 8th grade at this time. Okay. And he had come to work with me and knew exactly what we did in the warehouse. I was one of the warehouse managers, and he wrote most of the program because I was working long, silly hours.
Right.
And we got it done, and we took it to my boss, and he was just ecstatic.
What did the program do?
Well, the program was an inventory control program. The computer system we had would tell us how much cheese we had of each kind, but it didn't tell us where it was in the warehouse.
Shoot.
Yeah, that's why they'd get lost. And so now we built a tag system and with that program, and you knew where everything was automatically. We mapped out the warehouse, but anyway, my boss was just ecstatic. He says we had just gone out to have this software written, and it was too much money. We couldn't afford to do it. But he says in fact, your program is more than what we had actually asked for. He says,
wow.
I got to pay you some money for this. He gave me a sizable check.
Nice.
Took it home to my son and showed him, and his eyes got great big.
I hope you shared it with them. Bought him some toys or a Packers jersey.
He says, someday you and I are going to have our own business. We're going to be partners in our own company, and we're going to call it Hawksoft.
Dang. And that's where the name was born.
Yeah, we are living the American dream. Right after that, I left there because I was sick and tired of working the long hours, working weekends and stuff, and not being able to do some of the things that I wanted to do with family and church and things. And so my friend of mine talked me into becoming an insurance agent, of all things.
Yeah, lucky you.
I ended up in insurance and enjoyed it and saw the needs for things. I was captive for the first few years and then went independent, got to the independent side and really saw what a technology desert that was at the time. Now, this is the late 80s. And so we started writing some things. And Sean, meanwhile, was working, during high school, he was working for a company in kind of not downtown Portland, but on the edge of Portland. And he was writing some software for the new HP laser printer with the new laser printer language. And he could build forms with that. Mm-hmm. So we took all the insurance applications off the shelf and digitized them, and then integrated with the rating system, took the information from the rater, asked some more questions for the underwriting questions, and then would print that application out on the laser printer, all done.
Awesome.
And I was just using for the agency at the time. And then a friend ended up being a friend of mine. I didn't know him at the time, but he was the president of an insurance company in Seattle area. And he came down and he said, talk to the owner. And he said, I'm getting these applications. They look just like our applications, except they're black instead of green. And you fix the misspelling that were on there. How did you do that? And the owner, Bob, pointed at me and he says, that's the guy that did it right there. And he says, well, can I talk to him? He says, oh, yeah. And he invited me up to Seattle to meet with their agency meeting and to demo the software. And that's where I got my first 3 customers in 1995.
And so was there anything besides the software to print out? Did you have anything people could log into, or was it simply you guys?
Yeah, it was a log. You logged into it.
Yep.
Yeah, it was logged into it, and you could see all the data,
mm-hmm.
and you could correct anything that needed correcting and stuff, especially if things were missing, and answer the underwriting questions, and then hit print, and it would keep that database. And then gradually, we even did electronic upload. We were the first company, as far as I know, we were the first company to do electronic forms in the insurance industry.
Awesome. So that was 1995, and then
95 this month.
Really?
Yeah. This is our 9th anniversary.
Amazing. Felix
In
Potvin number.
fact, just lately here, well, first 3 customers were still our customers. Number 1 customer still is. The other 2 customers just sold out.
Man, they
Yeah.
couldn't wait for 30 years?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So you got those 3 customers. Did you instantly say, this is my new profession, I'm starting my own business? Or was there a little bit of a
Well,
lag time?
yeah. And in fact, my son-in-law married my daughter, and just in October, that's 29 years now. And we got this invite. I got the invite to go to Seattle to show it off. And I said, Jason, I think we've got something here. I says, he'd been helping a little bit.
Mhm.
I got him interested in programming, and he got involved, and he was helping build the forums. And I said, I think we got a business here. I says, you want to try this? He says, oh yeah, this sounds great. And so my son at the time was in El Salvador serving a mission for a church for
Yep.
2 years. And so then when he came back, he joined us after he went part-time to school at BYU in Provo. And then, but then was still working with us. And then we got really busy because other agents were telling everybody about it. So we were getting customers all along the way. And I said, finally told Sean, I says, hey, we're getting really, really busy. You got to come home. We need you. And at first he was kind of irritated at me. I got to get my degree. I says, what for?
Yeah. You
"Oh,
got
yeah,
the dream right here.
I got a job." He says, and then I realized that I was down there just teaching the teacher anyway.
Right.
And he came home, and that's 29 years ago.
So when he comes home, he comes on board. Are you two the primary developers of
Yeah,
Hawksoft?
all 3 of us are programming.
Yeah, it's all your programming.
Yeah,
And-
we're
and
all
what about-
programming. Plus, I'm spending a couple days on the road each day, driving to Seattle at first, and then and later on down into Oregon. But all our first customers were in Seattle area. And I'd go up there and demo, I'd install, I'd train. And meanwhile, those 2 were home answering the phones and programming.
Could you see it in people's eyes when you showed them for the first time in the demo? They'd be like, holy crap. Like
Yeah.
you see exactly the problem in their head that got solved, right?
Yep.
That must
Absolutely.
have been an awesome feeling.
Yeah, that is. And that's kind of things that no matter what industry I've been in, I was in construction I did drilled wells and stuff. And I was always a problem solver. That's the thing that kind of presses my buttons, if you will. I want to solve problems. I want to take a system and make it better. And but then I fell in love with people, especially the people in this industry. The independent insurance agents they're a different breed of people. They are wonderful. And I love dealing with them every day. What they do in their communities, how they serve their communities, how they take care of each other. It's amazing. I mean, I always tell people that we are a family business in a family-centric industry that protects the American family and American businesses. And when there's a catastrophe, they help make them whole.
Absolutely. And you can tell too, I mean, founders don't usually throw their hats in the ring and get their hands dirty at these trade shows anymore, right? And you've been doing this for 29 years, and you were standing right there at the booth next to me, next to a giant purple cow, giving me cookies, like just making
Love our
people
purple
smile.
cow.
That's awesome. I want to get to the purple cow in a second, but now we got you going across the country, or I guess your region at the time, selling, demoing, implementing, you're building. What did you take from that, and how did it evolve Hawksoft into the product it is today? And because now it's another 20 years from that point until now, right?
Like I was doing in the booth next to you.
Yep.
I was there. My thing is I went out to learn. I was there to learn from the agencies, to find out what their pain points were. And one of the pain points that they said, we want a management system. All the management systems are so expensive, we can't afford it. And so we started writing a new piece of software. An agency management system was our next thing that we wrote. And pretty quick, that went all across the country just by word of mouth.
Awesome.
And the main reason it went across country is because of the fact that we doubled down on customer service. We said, no, we're not going to do any advertising. We're going to make sure that we answer the phone right now.
Awesome.
We're going to help that customer solve their problems. And by doing that, we're going to let that customer do our marketing for us. That's where the purple cow comes in.
Let me set the stage here, because
You bet.
I think anyone who's been to an insurance conference in the last, I don't know when the purple cow came along, 3 years,
4 or
5 years.
5 years ago.
Yeah. If you walk into almost any insurance conference, especially any conference that Hawksoft's at, you're going to see a 20-foot tall inflatable purple cow next to their booth. And it's absurd to look at, and you walk in and you go, what the heck is that thing? But there's a story behind it, and that's where I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, the story is, and I wish I normally have the book here, but I gave it away, and I can't think of the guy's name now. Cohen, I think, or something like that. Alex
Yeah.
Cohen. It's not right. But anyway, because I like to give him credit for it. It's a marketing book, and it talks about the purple cow experience. If you're going down the road, going down the highway, and you see a black and white cow, you don't even think about it. Right? You don't even think about it at all. It's just a black and white cow. But if you were to see a purple and white cow, you would stop, take a picture, and tell the next person that you saw and show it to them, I saw a purple and white cow. That's the kind of experience that we want to give our customers, and we want to help our customers give to their customers so that they see, they have this experience, this service with the agency or whoever, service with us, and they say, this interaction was so fantastic that they tell everybody about it.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, the first thing I noticed was the purple cow isn't the Hawksoft logo. So I was like, we have to ask the question of why the purple cow exists. And that's the answer right there. But second, and to back up everything you're saying, obviously I'm not an agent, but I work with a ton of agents. And I always ask them what software they like, what they don't like, etc. And I've heard dozens of times now that you guys far and away have the best customer service and the most care. I think you can tell because you have a super strong user group. You have people always asking questions, features, and you guys continue to build them. So I don't think you're so far off from providing that purple cow experience, let alone bringing the purple cow with you wherever you go, which is great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So now in the world of insurance, call it over the last 5 to 7 years, InsurTech has evolved again, right? You see a lot of pieces coming out and some useful, some not. You're a guy who's been building in the insurance industry for, at this point, almost 30 years. What do you see as the next evolution? Like, what is the next thing that the dad and the son are going to build? Is it going to be a connectivity? Is it going to be a whole new platform? Where would your head go?
As I listen to insurance agents and hear what keeps them up at night, of course, right now it's the hard market.
Yep.
But the hard market has caused some things and connectivity between all these InsurTech things that are going on, all the new stuff that they're giving the agents, and some of that stuff is so fantastic. When I first got into the industry 35 years ago, was technology in this industry moved like an iceberg.
Yep.
It was horrendous. Every year we were talking about stuff, but it never came. It didn't change. And now in the last 4 or 5 years, 10 years starting, and then now in the last 5 years, it's been just moving faster and faster. All the new things that they're coming up with now, the big one, AI.
Right.
And how do you harness that stuff, and how do you connect it? That's the big thing, is how do you connect it? Because they have to work together. And when you go into the agency, the management system is kind of the hub. Mm-hmm. And so we've created different things with different outfits to integrate the data so that they can get at the data and give data back. And then, of course, the big thing about that data is the normalization of that data. We've got to talk the same language. The industry talks a certain language, and we all have to be talking that same language so that data makes sense. Whether you're doing AI or whether you're doing marketing or accounting, any of the programs, outside programs, they've got to talk the same language.
Agreed. And I don't want you giving away your trade secrets, but is that stuff that you're working on now?
We integrate with more InsurTechs than any other management system does.
Awesome.
And that's something that we work very closely with them, with each one of them, to make sure they know what our data map looks like, and then so that they can put things back in so that we get that really good connection.
Right. That's awesome. And then just to reiterate, it's still you and your son building. Are you the lead developers on all this?
Yeah. Well, I call them my sons. Yeah. But because they are, and but the three of they're my partners, and now we have about 160 some employees. Where we did have them, like I mentioned, with the to you before we started the recording, at one point we had 95 employees in our office. And then when COVID hit, we sent them all home.
Yeah, and just for context, if you see Paul's in probably your home wood shop, home creative studio right now, right? And rumor has it, and I think there's a lot of people who can validate this, you would hand make the desks for every single new employee, correct?
Yeah. Just before COVID, we had 95 employees in the office, and every one of them had a handmade desk by me.
What were you making it out of? What kind of wood?
It's a renewable resource wood. It's a hybrid of the eucalyptus tree called Grandis.
Branded.
And it's beautiful, beautiful wood, and it's hard, but it grows to a harvestable size in South America in 15 years.
Really?
So it's a very renewable resource, and that was one of the reasons I did it.
That's awesome. And so what, would you make it at home and then lug it into the office, or was it as assembled, or how did that
No,
work?
it's all assembled. Yeah, well, a lot of them were cubicle tops rather than just, some of them are desks,
Mhm.
but some of them are cubicle tops, and they can adjust the height of them for stand desks, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome.
And then every one of them had a 3-drawer cabinet. Yeah, it was
Multi-talented. He's building software, he's building desks. You could survive in any era, it seems like. That's pretty cool. And like a really important question, obviously you were having a blast when you and your son learned how to code, but are you still having fun doing all this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
People ask me why I haven't retired, and I says, well, I'll retire when I stop having fun. So basically, I'm telling them they're going to take me out feet first. This is our family business. This means so much to me. Some of my grandchildren are now involved in the company.
Awesome.
Or will be, and we're going to keep it as a family business. And family businesses have a special part in my heart. A lot of the majority of the insurance industry is family businesses,
Right.
and so that just resonates with me. And I want to help those families be successful in what they're doing.
I totally agree. I think you see it a lot, obviously, on the independent agent side. And I
Yeah.
just filmed an episode with one of our longest time clients, and he had bought his agency from his dad when it was 3 employees. And then he just sold it finally, however many years later. And he had grown it to like 4 or 5 offices and all
Yep.
that. I don't think his children wanted to go into it, but that was kind of his dad's legacy passed on to him, which he took, ran with, grew. And now I think for his children and their children, I'm sure after they'll be set up because of what his dad started, which is pretty incredible. And contrary to the point, I think on your side, you're on the tech side of things, right? I think what nowadays is sexy or cool is, the VC backed, funded type of business that is done, and it's a math equation, where I think you're taking the opposite approach. And what you took was, we want this to be enjoyable, done for the right reasons, and help people.
Well, for me, it's about relationships. In fact, I was just in Minnesota a few weeks ago, and I was talking to a dear friend of mine who's an agency owner that I personally installed years ago. He said, Paul, and he's got a huge agency now, and he says, Paul, what's your number one priority in your business? I said, my number one priority in my business is my employees. I said, because if I have happy employees, I have happy customers.
Mm-hmm.
I said, as you know, everything in this industry is about relationships. Relationships is the most important part of the industry, and that's what makes things happen. And so I always talk about the tech. If the tech doesn't support the relationships, throw it out.
Right. I
It's
agree.
about relationships, and that's what's going to make this. That's what makes this independent agency system great, because they have 2 things that the non-independents don't have. Now the captives that have the brick and mortar, they have relationships, but the online guys don't.
Right. Not at all.
The other thing, but the captives don't have, is choice. The independent agency has relationships and choice, and that's what makes them great.
Yeah. And then when you slide right in there and that's your whole kind of credo, then you tend to work out with them. So I started ending these with 2 questions that are not, you don't have to answer these business related. They can be if you want to go that way, but it can be more life and spiritual. I guess the first question would be, if you could go back to your younger self, call it 10 years old, 15 years old, and give yourself one piece of advice, sit down and tell them, hey, tell young Paul this, what would you tell yourself?
When I started off 40 years ago, I was the type of person, I didn't trust people. I didn't like people. Had to do with some of my background and growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I would said, get over it. People are wonderful. There are so many fantastic people out there. Yeah, there's a few knotheads out there, but for the most part, especially in this industry, there are wonderful, wonderful people. I guess I would have said, maybe I would have said, and then I second guess myself in saying this. I would have gotten involved in the insurance industry sooner. But if I look back at everything that I went through, everything that I've done leads to right here, right now.
Agreed.
And I wouldn't change that. So no, I don't think I would change anything because of the fact that I love where I'm at right now, doing what I'm doing. And if you did change anything, what does that change in the future then?
Right. You don't know.
Yeah,
You don't know that butterfly effect.
That's right.
Yeah. So the second question would be, if you could prescribe one thing to the entire planet, and it doesn't have to be a medicine, it could be a book, a routine, a thought, a habit, what would you prescribe?
Especially in this day and age with the society and politics the way it is, respect.
Respect.
Respect for the next person. I love my group of employees. Every one of them is unique and special, and that's the human race. Each one of them is unique and special. They all have a story, and we have to we may not agree with them. We don't have to agree with them, but we need to respect them. And I think if we could get that back into our culture again, that would change the whole face of what's going on right now.
Respecting and seeing people for who they are and understanding that. I'm with you there. I'm with you. Cool. I'm going to wrap this up and thank Paul. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of people who will come on this podcast that think like you and have done what you did. So you're one of the first episodes, but you're definitely going to be forever one of the more unique episodes and brains that come on here. So you want to plug anything? Obviously, we're going to plug Hawksoft, but what else do you got?
I'm just, Hawksoft is important to me.
Absolutely.
But the independent insurance agency is more important to me. I feel if you put first things first, my love for the independent insurance agency, it's what drives our success at Hawksoft. So the independent insurance agency, what we do there is everything. And sometimes we get a customer. We had one of my salespeople was dealing with a customer last week. He said, no, I don't think we're a good fit for you. I think a better fit would be a different management system. I know the guy over there. I'll call you and I'll make a warm introduction because it's what's good for them. It's not. And if you take care of that, everything else falls in place.
Agreed.
Take care of the relationship, everything else falls in place.
Agreed. Awesome. Well, I'm going to stop the recording, but you and I can hang on the line for a second. I appreciate this and wrapping it up nicely with a bow.